My name is Ethan, and I'm only 7, but I have to tell you what happened. My mom told me that when you see something this big, you can't keep it under your bed like a secret. Last Friday, everything went dark for a little while. I'm still a bit shaky when I talk about it, but I'm not scared anymore. I met Jesus. I saw a light that felt like the best hug you ever had, and he showed me what's happening to our world. He talked about the big things people see on the news, especially Donald Trump. This isn't a scary story. It's a wake-up call. If you can hear me, please listen. It was a normal Friday morning. Paul dropped me off at the library because I wanted to finish my new Ninjago book. I was sitting on the rug in the corner, looking at the pictures of Kai, the fire ninja. I had eaten a sandwich earlier that tasted a little funny, like old pennies. Suddenly, my tummy felt like it was full of hot rocks. I tried to stand up to find the librarian, but my legs felt like they were made of jelly. The words on the page started to swim away. I remember leaning my head against the bookshelf and saying, "God, I think I need help." Then the library just disappeared. 1 second I was looking at Kai's red suit, and the next second I was standing in a place where the air felt like music. There was no ceiling, just a sky that looked like it was made of diamonds and gold. I didn't feel sick anymore. I felt light, like a balloon that finally got let go. I looked down and saw my body on the floor of the library, and I saw the paramedics running in, but I wasn't in there anymore. I was standing in a garden where the flowers hummed when you walked past them. That's when I saw him. He didn't look like a painting. He looked like the sun, if the sun was a person you've known your whole life. I knew it was Jesus because my heart started jumping for joy. I ran to him, and he picked me up. His voice didn't sound like talking. It sounded like a song that explains everything. He called me little one and smiled. I asked him if I had to stay, and he said, "Not yet, Ethan. I have to show you the threads first." He held my hand, and his skin felt like warmth itself. It wasn't like touching a person. It was like touching the very idea of love. We started walking along a path that wasn't made of dirt or stone, but of soft, glowing light that felt like velvet under my feet. Everything around us was breathing. The trees didn't just stand there. They swayed in time with a heartbeat I could feel in my own chest. I looked at my hands, and they were glowing too, like I had swallowed a star. I asked Jesus why everything was so shiny, and he told me that this is how things really look when we aren't clouded by being sad or tired. As we walked, the air began to shimmer like a giant soap bubble. Jesus pointed toward the shimmer, and it opened up into a vision. I saw a vast, hot desert. The sand was a deep, dusty orange, and the sun was beating down so hard you could see the heat rising. I knew this was Iran. I saw big machines made of heavy metal rolling over the dunes, and the sound they made was a deep, angry rumble. In the sky, I saw streaks of fire that looked like falling stars, but they weren't pretty. They were things meant to hurt. I felt a little bit of fear, but Jesus squeezed my hand, and the fear turned into a soft peace. He showed me a small house made of mud and brick in a village far away from the big machines. Inside, a mother was hiding her children under a wooden table. Her heart was beating very fast, like a trapped bird. But then I saw something amazing. A thin, glowing golden thread came down from the sky and touched her shoulder. As soon as it touched her, she closed her eyes and started to whisper a prayer. The fear in her heart didn't disappear completely, but it grew quiet. Jesus said, "Even in the middle of the fire, my children are never alone. The world thinks this war is about land and oil, but it is really a shaking to see who will turn toward the light." The vision shifted, and I saw soldiers on both sides. They looked so young, almost like the big brothers I see at the park. One soldier was sitting in the back of a truck, holding a small, crumpled photo of his little sister. He was crying quietly so the others wouldn't see. I saw a golden thread reach him too, coming from a grandmother thousands of miles away who was kneeling by her bed. Jesus told me that the prayers of the small are the only thing holding back the darkness in the desert. He said that the year 2026 would see many such fires, but each fire was an invitation for people to remember how much they need him. The desert faded away, and the garden came back. But the colors were different now. They were deeper, more serious. Jesus led me to a high place that looked like a mountain made of crystal. From there, I could see the whole world at once. It looked like a giant, pulsing heart. He pointed toward America, and I saw the land glowing with a strange, flickering light. It was like a lamp that was trying to stay on during a big storm. He whispered that the storm wasn't coming from outside, but from inside the hearts of the people living there. I saw a man standing on a stage. He had bright hair and a very loud voice. I knew him from the television, Donald Trump. Around him, the air was swirling like a tornado. I saw people screaming his name with joy, and other people screaming his name with anger. It looked like a great divide, like the earth was cracking open right under his feet. But Jesus didn't look at the crowds. He looked at the man. I saw Trump in a quiet room, sitting by himself. He looked tired and his hands were shaking just a little bit. He was looking at a small candle, and for a second his face looked very humble, like a child who was lost and looking for home. Jesus said to me, "Ethan, look at the sifting." I saw a giant wind blowing through the cities of America. The wind wasn't blowing trees down, it was blowing through people. I saw it blow through a tall office building in a big city. People inside were arguing about politics, their faces red and their eyes unkind. The wind blew away their fancy clothes and their expensive things, leaving only their hearts visible. Some hearts were bright and gold, even if they were scared. Others were dark and hard, like stones. He showed me a school where a group of kids were sitting at a lunch table. One boy was wearing a hat that made their kids angry. They were saying mean words to him. But then, a little girl who wasn't wearing any special hat walked over and shared her apple with him. When she did that, a golden thread flared up so bright it lit up the whole cafeteria. Jesus smiled and said, "That is the sifting." 2026 is the year where people must decide if they love their opinions more than they love their brothers. The man you see on the stage is a mirror. He is there so people can see the anger or the love they have hidden inside themselves. I saw visions of people watching the news in their living rooms. I saw a man get so mad at the screen that he threw his remote. When he did that, a gray shadow grew around his house. But in the next house over, I saw a woman turn off the TV and go outside to help her neighbor carry in groceries. When she did that, the gray shadows moved away. Jesus explained that the year 2026 would be full of noise and shouting about leaders and wars, but the real story was happening in the small moments of kindness. He showed me a vision of a giant scale, like the one in the doctor's office, but much bigger and made of light. On one side were all the speeches, the laws, the debates, and the money. On the other side was a single tear from a person praying for peace. The side with the tear was heavier. It pulled the scale down. Jesus said, "The world thinks the big men in suits are the ones who decide the future, but I am looking for the ones who kneel in the dark. In 2026, I am sifting the nations to find the ones who still know how to be humble." We walked further into the garden, and the music grew louder. It wasn't like a radio. It was like the flowers and the grass were all singing together. Every time I breathed in, I felt like I was breathing in life itself. There was no dust here, no dirt, just pure, clean light. I saw a group of people I didn't recognize, but they felt like family. They were cheering for me, and their smiles made me feel like I was the most important boy in the universe. Jesus told me that they were the cloud of witnesses, watching everything happening on earth and sending their love down through the golden threads. He showed me a vision of a hospital. It was 2026, and the rooms were very full. I saw doctors and nurses who were so tired they could barely stand. But then I saw a nurse pause by a bed and place her hand on a patient's forehead. She wasn't looking at a chart or a screen, she was just being there. A soft blue light flowed from her hand into the patient. Jesus said, "This is the healing I am bringing. It won't come from a bottle or a machine. It will come when my people remember that they are my hands and my feet. The war in Iran and the trouble in the government are just the shadows. The real light is breaking through in the places where people choose to serve." I saw a vision of a great assembly, thousands of people gathered in a field. They weren't there to protest or to cheer for a politician. They were just standing in silence, looking up at the sky. I saw Donald Trump there too, standing among them, not as a leader, but as just another man. The wind was blowing softly now, and it felt like a cool rain was washing everyone clean. Jesus told me that 2026 would be a year of great uncovering. The The things that people thought were solid would melt away, and the only thing left standing would be the truth. Jesus took my hand again, and we started walking toward a part of the garden where the trees looked like they were made of frozen starlight. Their leaves didn't rustle like the trees at the park. They made a sound like 1,000 tiny bells ringing at once. I looked up at him, and he seemed even taller now, like he was holding up the whole sky just by standing there. He told me that everything I was seeing was a lesson for my heart to carry back. He said the world was getting very loud and very messy, but that I shouldn't be afraid of the mess. He waved his hand, and a new vision started to grow right out of the air. It was like a movie, but I was inside of it. I saw a huge ocean, and the waves were very tall and very dark. I saw ships from many different countries, and they were all pointing their big guns at each other. Some of the ships had flags I didn't know, but some had the American flag, and some had flags with writing that looked like beautiful swirls. Jesus told me this was near the land of Iran. I saw the water start to boil because of all the anger under the surface. It wasn't just hot water. It was the anger of people who'd forgotten how to be friends. Then Jesus showed me something small. On one of the big gray ships, I saw a young man sitting on a metal bunk. He was reading a letter from his mom. He was shaking because he didn't want to fight, but he had to be there. I saw a golden thread come out of the letter and wrap around his wrist like a bracelet. Jesus said, "His mother's love is a shield." The world talks about the big war, but I am watching the boy on the bunk. In 2026, the fires in the desert will try to pull everyone into the darkness, but the golden threads will pull them back toward me. I saw a vision of a giant city in the Middle East. The buildings were very tall and made of glass, but they were shaking. I saw the people running into the streets. They weren't fighting, they were just scared. I saw an angel standing on top of the tallest building. The angel was huge, with wings that looked like white fire. He wasn't there to destroy things. He was there to hold the walls up while the people ran to safety. Jesus told me that even when things look like they are falling apart, his messengers are there. He said the war in Iran would be a time when many people would finally look up and ask for help, and that help would always be there. Then the vision changed again, and we were back in America. I saw the White House where the president lives, but it looked like it was surrounded by a thick gray fog. I saw people standing outside the gates, and they were all shouting at each other. One side was wearing red hats, and the other side was wearing blue shirts, and they looked so angry that their faces were twisted. But then Jesus showed me what was happening behind the fog. I saw Donald Trump standing by a window. He wasn't wearing his suit jacket, and his hair looked a little messy. He was looking out at the people, and he looked very sad. Jesus said to me, "Ethan, look at his heart." I saw a small light inside the man, like a candle flickering in a drafty room. Sometimes the light would get big and bright, and other times it would almost go out when he got proud or angry. Jesus explained that Donald Trump is like a mirror for the whole country. When people look at him and feel hate, it's because they have hate in their own hearts. When they look at him and feel like he is a king who can't do anything wrong, it's because they are looking for a man to save them instead of looking for God. Jesus said, in 2026, I am using this man to show the people what they have become. He is the sifting wind. He will blow away the leaves so people can see if their roots are strong. I saw a vision of a giant wheat field. The wind was blowing very hard, and the stalks of wheat were bending almost to the ground. Some of the stalks stayed strong and didn't break, but others snapped and flew away. Jesus said that the year 2026 is like that wind. He said the politics and the arguments are just the wind shaking the field. The goal isn't to see who wins an election, but to see which hearts stay rooted in love. I saw a vision of a voting booth, and a woman was standing inside it. She was crying because she didn't know what to do. She felt like no matter what she picked, it was wrong. But then she stopped and whispered a prayer, and I saw a golden thread come down and touch her head. Her face got very calm. She realized that the person on the paper didn't matter as much as the peace in her soul. Jesus showed me a vision of a big mountain of gold coins. People were climbing all over it, trying to get to the top. They were pushing each other and stepping on each other's hands. But as they climbed, the gold turned into sand and started to slip away. At the bottom of the mountain, I saw a group of people sitting in a circle. They didn't have any gold, but they were sharing a single loaf of bread. Each time they broke a piece off, the bread grew back. They were laughing and singing. Jesus said, "In 2026, the things the world thinks are valuable will turn into sand. The money and the power will slip through their fingers, but the things done in love will multiply like the bread." I saw a vision of a giant clock. The hands were moving very fast, spinning around and around. Every time the hands passed the number 12, a little spark of light would fly off and hit the earth. Jesus told me these sparks were moments of choice. He said that in 2026, time would feel like it was moving faster than ever before. People would feel rushed and stressed, like they were running out of time. But he told me that if they just stepped into the silence, they would find him waiting. I saw a vision of a man in a very busy office, with phones ringing and computers glowing. He looked like he was about to scream, but then he closed his eyes and took one deep breath, and for a second, the whole office turned into a garden. The phones stopped making noise, and he felt the warmth of the sun. Then he opened his eyes and went back to work, but he was smiling. Jesus showed me a vision of the sky over America again. I saw a giant map of the country, but it wasn't made of paper. It was made of lights. Some cities were very bright, and some were very dark. I saw a golden thread start in a small town in the middle of the country and stretch all the way to a big city on the coast. It was a little boy praying for his cousin who was sick. Then I saw another thread start in a church and stretch all the way to the desert in Iran. It was a group of people praying for the soldiers. Soon, the whole map was covered in these golden threads, and they started to glow so bright that the dark spots began to disappear. Jesus said, "The world thinks the leaders in Washington or the generals in the war are the ones in charge. But look, Ethan." He pointed to a tiny bedroom where a little girl was kneeling by her bed. She was praying for Donald Trump, not because she liked him or didn't like him, but just because she knew he was a man who needed help. When she prayed, a giant beam of light hit the man in his office. He stopped what he was doing and put his head in his hands. He felt a moment of peace he couldn't explain. Jesus said, "This is how the world is changed, one prayer at a time." In 2026, the golden threads of prayer will be the only thing that keeps the nations from falling into the dark. I saw a vision of a great bridge. It was made of light, and it stretched across a giant canyon. On one side of the canyon was a land of shadows and noise, where people were fighting, and the ground was shaking from the war in Iran. On the other side was a land of peace and sunshine. I saw thousands of people trying to cross the bridge. Some people were carrying heavy bags full of money and pride, and they found it very hard to walk. Some were trying to push others off the bridge because they wanted to be first. But the ones who were walking the easiest were the ones who weren't carrying anything at all. They were holding hands and helping the people who were stumbling. Jesus told me that the year 2026 is like that bridge. It is a way to get from the old way of living, where everyone is angry and selfish, to a new way of living, where everyone cares for each other. He said that Donald Trump is like a signpost on the bridge. Some people look at the signpost and get mad, and some people look at it and get happy, but they forget that they are supposed to be crossing the bridge, not standing around the signpost. He said, "Tell them to keep moving. Tell them not to get stuck in the arguments. The bridge is narrow, and only love can carry you across." I saw a vision of a giant tree with deep, deep roots. The tree was being hit by a huge storm. There was thunder and lightning, and the wind was trying to pull the tree out of the ground. I saw the name 2026 carved into the bark of the tree. The branches were shaking, and some of the leaves were falling off, but the trunk stayed perfectly still. Under the ground, I saw the roots wrapping around giant rocks. The rocks had words on them like faith and kindness and mercy. If you are rooted in me, the storm of 2026 cannot move you. The war in the desert and the shaking in the government are just the weather. They will pass, but the tree will remain. He showed me a vision of a lion and a lamb. They weren't in a zoo. They were sitting in the middle of a city street. People were walking past them, and they were so busy on their phones and looking at their watches that they didn't even see the lion and the lamb. But a few people stopped. When they stopped to look, the lion would purr and the lamb would nuzzle their hand. Those people would walk away with a light in their eyes. Jesus said that his peace is always right there in the middle of the noise, but only the people who are looking for it will find it. He said that in 2026, the noise will be so loud that people will have to work very hard to find the silence, but it will be worth it. I saw a vision of a dark tunnel. At the end of the tunnel was a tiny pinprick of light. I saw the world entering the tunnel. It felt scary and cold, and I could hear the echoes of the war in Iran and the shouting of the politicians. But as we got closer to the light, the tunnel started to get wider and warmer. I saw that the light wasn't just a lamp. It was a giant doorway into a world that looked just like the garden I was standing in. Jesus told me that 2026 is the year the world goes through the tunnel. It will feel dark for a little while, and people will be afraid they are lost. But the light at the end is certain. He said, "I am the light at the end of the tunnel, and I am the one walking with you through the dark." Jesus sat down on a bench that looked like it was grown out of a giant pearl. He patted the spot next to him, and I climbed up. My feet dangled off the edge, and I realized I was wearing my favorite light-up sneakers, but they weren't blinking red and blue anymore. They were blinking with a light that looked like tiny pieces of the sun. Jesus looked at me and said that the things I saw were not just for me, but for everyone who is feeling a little bit lost right now. He told me that in 2026, the world would feel like a giant room where someone just turned on a very bright flashlight and all the things that were hidden in the corners were finally going to be seen. He pointed a finger toward the sky, and a new vision appeared. I saw a map of Iran again, but this time it was covered in a heavy, dark smoke. I could hear the sound of people crying, and the smell of the air was like burnt matches. Jesus told me that the war in Iran is like a giant fever. When I get a fever, my mom says my body is trying to get rid of the germs. He said that the world is having a fever because it is trying to get rid of the pride and the anger that have been building up for a very long time. I saw a vision of a soldier in a dusty uniform. He was standing near a big iron tank, but instead of holding his gun, he was holding a small white flower he had found growing in the sand. He was looking at the flower and smiling, even though there was smoke all around him. Jesus said, "Look, Ethan, even in the middle of the fire, the heart can choose to see the beauty." In 2026, many will be forced to choose between the gun and the flower. Then the vision shifted to a big city in America. I saw a giant building with a name in big gold letters on the front. I knew it was one of Donald Trump's buildings. I saw people standing in front of it, some with signs that said, "We love you," and some with signs that were very mean. But then Jesus showed me a vision of the man himself. He was in a quiet room, and he was looking at an old Bible that belonged to his mom. He was turning the pages very slowly, and his eyes were wet. Jesus told me, in 2026, Trump will be a sign that makes everyone choose what kind of person they want to be. I am not looking at the politics. I am looking at the hearts. Those who hate him will find their own hate growing like a weed. Those who worship him like a god will find their own disappointment. But those who pray for him will find my peace. I saw a vision of a giant wind blowing through a school. All the books were flying around, and the papers were blowing out the windows. The kids were scared, but then a teacher stood in the middle of the room and started to sing a song. As she sang, the wind turned into a gentle breeze that smelled like cookies. Jesus said that in 2026, the truth will come out like a rushing wind, and it will blow away the lies that people have been telling in schools and in the news. He said that people will try to hide from the wind, but it will find them anyway. But if they have the song of love in their hearts, the wind won't hurt them. It will only refresh them. He showed me a vision of a giant net made of golden threads. The net was draped over the whole world. I saw a man in a small boat in the middle of the ocean. He was fishing, but he wasn't catching any fish. He was very hungry and very tired. But then he looked down and saw one of the golden threads of the net floating in the water. He reached out and touched it, and suddenly his boat was full of bright silver fish. Jesus said, "The golden threads are the prayers of my people." In 2026, when the food gets expensive and the war in Iran makes everything feel shaky, the people who rely on the threads will find that they have everything they need. I am sifting the world to see who trusts in their own money and who trusts in my provision. I saw a vision of a giant clock again. The hand for the year 2026 was glowing red. Every time the clock ticked, a giant wave of light would wash over a different country. I saw a wave wash over a hospital in a big city. I saw a doctor who was about to give up because he was so tired. But when the wave hit him, he felt like he had just slept for 1,000 years. He went back to work with a smile on his face. Jesus said, "I am sending my spirit like a wave in 2026. It will hit the places that are the most tired. It will hit the people who think they can't go on. The war and the politics are just the background noise, but my wave is the real power." He showed me a vision of a giant mountain made of glass. Inside the mountain, I could see all the secrets that leaders have been keeping. I saw men in suits talking in dark rooms, planning things that weren't good. But then the mountain started to turn transparent, like a window. Everyone in the world could see what was inside. I saw the people gasp as they realized they had been lied to. Jesus said, "In 2026, the glass mountain will become clear. No more secrets, no more hiding. I am sifting the leaders to see who is honest and who is not." This is why the world feels so strange right now. It's the glass beginning to clear. I saw a vision of a little girl in a purple dress. She was standing in a field of tall grass. She was holding a small bird that had a broken wing. She wasn't a doctor or a queen. She was just a little girl. But as she stroked the bird's feathers, the wing healed and the bird flew away. Jesus said, "The power of 2026 is not in the big speeches or the big armies. It is in the hands of the ones who care for the broken. I am raising up an army of children and humble people who will do miracles while the world is busy arguing about the news." I saw a vision of a giant bridge connecting Iran and America. The bridge was made of people holding hands. On one side, the people were wearing traditional clothes, and on the other side, they were wearing jeans and t-shirts. And they weren't fighting. They were pulling each other toward the middle. In the center of the bridge, there was a giant cross made of light. Jesus told me that even though the news says they are enemies, he is building a bridge of hearts. He said that in 2026, many people in Iran would have dreams of him, and many people in America would start to feel a deep love for the people they used to fear. He showed me a vision of a giant library, much bigger than the one where I got sick. The books weren't on shelves, they were floating in the air. Each book was a person's life. Jesus reached out and grabbed one book. It was a man who lived in a very small apartment and worked a very hard job. He didn't think his life mattered. But Jesus opened the book and every page was glowing. The man had shared his lunch with a coworker. He had helped an old lady cross the street. He had prayed for the president every night. Jesus said, "This is the true history of the world. In 2026, I am showing people that their small acts of love are the only things that will be written in the book of life. The war in the desert will be a footnote, but the love of the humble will be the main story." I saw a vision of a giant bell. It was hanging from the sky and it was made of solid gold. A giant angel was standing next to it, holding a hammer made of starlight. The angel looked at Jesus and Jesus nodded. The angel hit the bell and the sound was so beautiful it made me cry. The sound went out over the whole earth, and every person stopped what they were doing for just 1 second. In that second, they felt a peace that surpassed all understanding. Jesus said, "In 2026, I will ring the bell of truth. Every ear will hear it, and every heart will have a chance to answer. It will be the year of the great awakening." He showed me a vision of a giant garden where all the different flowers were growing together. There were roses and lilies and sunflowers and flowers I had never seen before. They weren't fighting for space or trying to be the prettiest. They were all turning their faces toward the sun. Jesus said, "This is my church. It is not a building or a list of rules. It is a garden of people who love the light." In 2026, I am sifting the buildings to find the garden. I am pulling up the weeds of division so the flowers can grow tall. I saw a vision of a dark room where a group of people were sitting around a table. They were very angry, and they were talking about how to hurt their enemies. But then a single golden thread dropped through the ceiling and landed in the middle of the table. One man reached out and touched it, and his face changed from angry to soft. He looked at the others and said, "We can't do this anymore." Jesus said, "My light can enter even the darkest rooms. In 2026, I will interrupt the plans of the wicked with the power of a single prayer." He showed me a vision of a giant ocean wave made of gold. It was coming toward the coast of America. It looked scary at first because it was so big, but when it hit the shore, it didn't destroy anything. It just washed away all the trash and the dirt. It left the sand sparkling and the water clear. Jesus said, "This is my mercy. It looks overwhelming to those who are holding on to their trash, but to those who want to be clean, it is the greatest gift. In 2026, my mercy will wash over the nations like a flood." I saw a vision of a giant tree that was growing out of the middle of a city street. The roots were pushing up the sidewalk, and the branches were reaching into the windows of the offices. People were stopped in their tracks looking at the tree. It was covered in fruit that looked like glowing jewels. People started to reach out and pick the fruit, and as soon as they ate it, their illnesses disappeared and their sadness turned into joy. Jesus said, "I am planting the tree of life in the middle of the world's chaos. In 2026, people will find that the things they were looking for in politics and money are actually found in me." He showed me a vision of a giant sky where the clouds were shaped like words. I saw the word hope, and the word love, and the word truth. Then I saw the name Trump, and the word Iran. The words started to move and change, blending together until they all turned into the name Jesus. He told me every name and every event is just a shadow that points to me. In 2026, the shadows will get very long, but that just means the light is getting very bright. Tell them not to watch the shadows. Tell them to watch the light. Then Jesus stood up, and the garden started to shimmer like a reflection in a pond. He put his hand on my head and said, "It is time to go back, Ethan. Remember the golden threads. Remember the sifting wind. Remember that I am always with you, even when the news is scary." I felt a sudden pull, like a magnet was tugging on my heart. The colors of the garden started to swirl together, and the music grew faint. I saw his face one last time, and he was smiling with so much love that I felt like I could fly. Suddenly, I felt the weight of my body again. It felt heavy and cold compared to the garden. I heard a muffled sound like someone talking through a thick blanket. I felt a sharp pinch in my arm, and then my eyes flew open. The bright lights of the hospital room were stinging, and for a second I wanted to close them and go back to the garden. But then I saw my mom's face, and I knew I had work to do. I had to tell everyone that the threads were real, and that 2026 was going to be the year we all learned how to see again. When I finally opened my eyes, it felt like waking up from a 1,000-year dream. The world around me was the same, but I wasn't. I could hear the quiet behind every sound, the heartbeat beneath the noise. Mom leaned over me, tears streaking her face. "Baby, you're here," she whispered. I smiled weakly. "Mom, he talked to me." She froze. "Who?" I said it softly. "Jesus." The room went silent, except for the slow, steady beeping of the monitor. I could see confusion and awe in her eyes. "He told me things, Mom, about people, about 2026, about Trump." Her hand trembled as she brushed my hair. "What did he say?" I looked past her toward the window, where the evening light turned the glass gold. "He said that year won't be an ending, it'll be a beginning. People will stop trusting noise and start listening again. He said, hearts will divide before they heal, but love will win." Mom whispered, "That sounds like hope." I nodded. He said, "Hope will look like ordinary people choosing kindness when the world tells them to choose sides." I could feel warmth still pulsing in my chest, the same warmth from his hand. "Mom," I said, "he doesn't want us to be scared of change. He wants us to be ready for light." She closed her eyes and whispered, "Then that's what we'll do." In the week since I came home, life looks normal, but it doesn't feel normal. Birds seem to sing in slower rhythm, like the air carries messages. Even silence feels alive. At first, I thought my mind was imagining it, But then small things began to happen. One morning, I woke up before dawn and saw a soft golden shimmer on my wall, moving like light underwater. It didn't scare me. It comforted me. I whispered, "You're still here, aren't you?" And a warmth filled my room that felt exactly like his presence. At school, I noticed things differently. When a classmate cried quietly in the corner, I felt his sadness like it was my own. I walked over, sat down, and said nothing, just listened. He looked up at me and whispered, "Thank you." That moment felt bigger than any vision. Mom said, "Maybe you brought a little of heaven back with you." I told her, "No, I think heaven's always been here. We just don't notice." Every night, I close my eyes and ask, "What now?" And in the stillness, I feel a small whisper rise in my heart. Live what you saw. Make Earth glow again. It wasn't dramatic. It was gentle, but it was real.